the body is something that we receive. It becomes a task, of course, because we transform our bodies in order that we are able to love better. But you cannot forget that the body has been received, and that this receptivity is not evil, it's not something imposed upon you, but because it comes from love, can be received as a gift.
Father José Granados is the current Superior General of the Disciples of the Hearts of Jesus and Mary. He is a professor of dogmatic theology and co-founder and president of the Veritas Amoris Project. Listen in as we discuss the challenges facing marriage today, the crisis of meaning in the culture, and the hope that Christ offers in his life and the Eucharist. Benedictine College is transforming culture in America, one conversation at a time. From our studios in Atchison, Kansas, these are the Benedictine Dialogues. All right, Father Granados, welcome to the Benedictine Dialogues.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you here on campus. I heard about the wonderful lecture you gave last night. Sorry I was unable to attend, but I'm sure we'll talk about it during this conversation. Right. So to start off, I wanted to get a little bit of your background and the work you're doing for the church.
Well, I am in a community, the Disciples of the Hearts of Jesus and Mary, religious community. And now I am the superior of the community. So I am leading the community. Basically, my life has been, my ministry has been teaching theology, especially in the areas of marriage and the family. I've been teaching for almost 15 years at the John Paul II Institute for Studies on Marriage and the Family, first in Washington, D.C., and then in Rome, and have been there as vice president of the John Paul II Institute. And now I am leading the Disciples of the Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and also with the Veritas Amoris Project. It is a project that wants to serve the truth of love. It's an academic project trying to spread the truth of love, the theology of the body, and the theology of love. That's more or less what I do now.
Okay, yeah, which are extremely important. And I'm sure it's an offshoot of your work with John Paul II, and I believe you've worked with Benedict XVI as well, and Pope Francis. What has that been like, working with that level of the church?
Well, I have seen it. My work has been advising theologically and teaching and researching in the truth. So I think it's crucial today. This is, I think, the biggest question for the church. Maybe it's not the most, it doesn't seem to be urgent, but it's really urgent as well. As important is spreading the truth of love. So we are in the midst of a cultural crisis that's very, very deep. And I think John Paul II, his gift for the church was precisely that. He saw that it is in marriage and the family that is the place where the gospel can touch the life of every person, and where the gospel can touch as well society as a whole. So this is why from the beginning, when he was a young priest, he started to work with families and to research in the truth of love, the vocation of marriage and the family. So and then he founded this John Paul II Institute for Studies on Marriage and the Family, in which you see this. He was very much involved. When I started teaching there, still you could feel I was with professors who had been sharing with him conversations, philosophical and theological, about marriage and the family. And still, then with Pope Benedict as well, he was very close to our. I remember a couple of audiences with him as well, encouraging to move forward in the evangelization of marriage and the family, and thinking about the theology of love. So that's been a great experience as well.
Yeah, and before we got started, we actually were having a little conversation about some of the issues facing marriage and family, and the very continuing declining birth rates, and some of the metaphysical implications of that. Maybe share some insights into that.
Yeah, I was referring to a book by Rémy Braque, the French philosopher, in which he reflects philosophically about this crisis and why. So why the question is why to generate children. And I see the crisis not just, so it doesn't seem to be just the economy or just other problems, but the meaning of generation. So what is the meaning of generating? And what he says, and I agree, is that you can only transmit life when you understand life as not only something that you enjoy, but something that is in itself good. so that it's worth transmitting it to others. It's not only I am happy because I live and I enjoy my life, but life is something that is a gift so great, so big, that I want that I cannot but transmit it to others. Once you have this idea that life is is so big a gift that the only option is to give it to others. I think that's the moment in which it makes sense to generate. But if you lose this idea of life, and I think first of all, when you lose the connection with the Creator, with God the Creator, it's difficult to understand life as a gift, and a gift that you have received, and therefore is so big that you need to transmit it to others. So the absence of God as Creator. So we have an idea of God that is there, but is not really the Creator, the one who sustains the world and loves the world, and the world comes from Him in an act of love. That is lacking. So, and then I think the second more closer dimension is that we have lost also the connection between love and life because of the sexual revolution, contraception. We have separated love and life. If life is not connected with love, it's difficult to see life as a gift so big that I cannot but transmit it to others. So I think this separation is also when I understand that my life comes from love, then I can see that it is a gift. And in the experience of this love, well, I want to transmit life because this experience is fruitful. So I think this is more or less what is happening. And so it's not just you can foster, that people have more children in different ways, and it's good. But the question, the ultimate question, you need to address also this question of the meaning of life, the meaning of love, and the presence of God in public, in the life of people, and also in public life as the Creator of the world. And is the one who explains that the dignity of the person as well.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting because when those metaphysical realities are taking part in the practical, you end up now with a major loneliness epidemic. You end up with divorce rates higher than 50%. You end up with, sadly, broken families and people who have experienced a incorrect notion of love, and they go out into the world thinking, why would I possibly want to bring another being into this brokenness? Yeah, right. We're living in a very sadly broken culture that people don't even know to ask that question sometimes, of what really is love and how can I express that?
Right. This is why I think that for the church and for our mission of the church is crucial, the question of hope. So how to give hope in this situation in which we live in a cultural devastation so big. It was helpful reading a book by philosopher Jonathan Lear on this issue and discussing it with some of my confreres and other people, which is called Radical Hope. And it talks about how you can give hope when culture has been devastated. So I think, in a sense, it's a question of what is this radical hope that we can bring to our culture, to our society. So a hope that is alive even in the midst of when our practical cultures doesn't seem to give meaning to our life. Is there something else that is deeper, that we can go to that and say, well, there is still hope that we can, in a sense, reinvent a new culture, because the cultural mediations for this vision of life are lacking. So even for the church, how can we rebuild ways of living together in the family that mediate the gospel of sports, work, leisure, nature, all these areas of life, which are the areas in which we find also our humanity. How can become a place where we can find this meaning of life as a gift that is given to others, and how they can mediate an encounter with the Christian God. We don't have these mediations, and this hope needs to lead us to the task of rebuilding culture, transforming culture. So our culture, the small culture of our life, but also from there also the big culture, because it's about transforming the world, transforming the culture of the world. Mm-hmm. So if we have this hope, then I think the task is at least we can start the task. It's a huge task because it's regenerating the culture. But you need to be rooted in the hope that builds. I think for Christians, we do have this hope because the gospel tells us that we do have already, so Christian hope is we do have already the fulfillment. We don't need to wait for the fulfillment to come. We need to wait for it to flourish totally, but we do have already the fulfillment. We do have already in baptism, in the Eucharist, in the presence of Christ in our lives, all has been given to us. And this is our radical hope. And this way, and it has been given to us, for example, in the sacrament of marriage. So you have the radical hope. And that, I think, in the midst of the devastation, we can say, well, there is a mission, and we can be confirmed in our mission, and that we do have the gift. And I would say a couple that is starting their married life, for example, you have received all you need. Now, this gift needs to expand, of course. But is this confidence that we have the gift, that is, we have the whole, and now it needs to expand. We need to recognize, to acknowledge the gift, because many times we don't acknowledge it. But I think this is the hope of the church for today, even in the midst of these problems, confusions, and difficulties, to realize that we have the foundational gift that gives us a radical hope.
Yes. And it's interesting, too, because I see in young couples and young people both a concern, but also a big hope of they want that. They've seen the brokenness, they've seen the cultural devastation, and they want change. They want to go back to tradition, back to the idea of traditional values, traditional families, because they know that's part of what's going to heal and maybe start up some of these new cultural realities that will become new mediarities for the passing on of hope or the passing on of meaning of life. And so I think that what we see in young people is definitely a small glimmer, but a glimmer of hope that they really do want change. And then you start to see generational change once that happens, right? So, which brings me, honestly, I think to the source of our hope, which is Christ, which brings me to your lecture last night, which was sponsored by our Center for Family Life with Tori Bauckham, on Christ as the teacher and incarnation of charity. Maybe give a synopsis of that and how it is that in him we find our hope.
Yeah, the lecture was about charity. So what is charity? What is Christian love? Because today we live in a confusion about that as well. No, I started quoting an Italian philosopher who is one of the founders of postmodernity, Gianni Vattimo, who passed away 1 year ago. And well, he converted to Christianity, but to a sort of Christianity that I think is not Christian. Because what he said is, well, I'm going back to the church, but with all this postmodernity background in which, in the end, Christianity is not about truth, it's only about love. So we need to take away the doctrine that is separating us in a kind of humility, he called it. But I think it's a false humility, I would say, because if you take out the truth, if you take out the primacy of truth in Christianity, in the end, you end up losing also what love is all about. There can be no love without truth. I think in the magisterium we have a lot of confirmation of that, even recent magisterium. I think of the encyclical Lumen Fidei, written by Pope Benedict and Pope Francis together. And there's a paragraph about the connection between truth and love. You cannot have love without truth, because a love without truth is not a faithful love. It's not going to last. And finally, it's not going to establish communion. It's not going to, because truth is a common vision. It's to be able to share something in common with the others. No, if you don't believe in truth, then what you are finally saying is charity means you live your life and I live my life, and we respect each other. But this is really poor. It's okay, go your way, I go my way. We have different visions, we agree to disagree. And then what is charity then? Whereas the Christian proposal is there is a possibility of a perfect communion in the same vision, which is the vision of God, which is a vision that is not imposing itself on others, but comes from the love that we have received. So I think this was the question. I think in dialogue with these visions of love, that seems to be contrary to truth. So charity is separated from the truth. I mean, in the great text by St. Paul in 1 Corinthians 13 is very clear, that charity rejoices in the truth. Rejoices in the truth. And that's so. And then I wanted to put that in connection with Christ, and with Christ as there's a sentence by Saint Maximus the Confessor, in which he says that we Christians, we are lucky regarding charity, because we have as our master charity itself. And it has been interpreted, so Christ is not only the teacher of charity, but he has incarnated charity in his life, in his way of living. And so the fact that Christ is a measure of charity, I'm seeing also, and I mentioned that in the talk, that many times we are also in theology, some theologians, looking at Christ and saying, well, Christ can teach us how to love only up to a certain point. But we need to understand that he was very far away in time. And so now we have different challenges. We need to take only his proposal, his main proposal, but not the details of his proposal. At least I'm reading theologians today that are, this is because the challenges are new, we have new ideas of love is changing. So Christ is the teacher of love in the general sense that he taught us to love others. But then if you go to concrete teachings, like for example, the indissolubility of marriage, or looking at the whole of the Bible, the marriage between a man and a woman, that we need to be take distance from Christ. No, so I was shocked by these statements. No, because the idea of Vatican II, that Christ is the one who reveals man to himself in Gaudium et Spes 22. No? Christ reveals man to man himself. No, that has been the theological consensus for many years after the council, even in different areas of theology. Mm-hmm. Now this consensus seems to be breaking down, and I was really so I wanted to say, well, no, Christ is love in his flesh, in the way he loved, in the way he taught love. We have really the fulfillment of our desire to love. So the talk was about that connection between charity and Christ, and especially focused on the Eucharist, which is the last, at the end of his life, how he loved us to the end. And in the Eucharistic words, you find the full definition of charity. This was so the proposal was that by looking in Christ, you see charity in action as well. Not only teaching, but the teaching of charity, that charity is love to God, that then becomes also love to neighbor in as much as we want our neighbor to get to God. So Christ has opened up this new vision of charity.
Thank you for listening to the Benedictine Dialogues. We'll be right back to the show after this brief message. Have you ever desired a deeper understanding of the life of Jesus? Check out The Extraordinary Story with Tom Hoops.
This is The Extraordinary Story, a podcast about the life of Christ. Jesus Christ, God Himself, entered the confusing maze that is our world to show us who we are and to give us His cross as a ladder up and out. This is His story and ours, The Extraordinary Story.
The Extraordinary Story has been featured in The Loop, Alatea, Our Sunday Visitor, and Relevant Radio. You can listen to The Extraordinary Story on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And now, back to the show. It's interesting because I've always struggled with certain schools of thought that try to separate the transcendentals. They try to say that truth, goodness, and beauty can be somehow sliced or taken apart. But I've always thought that, in Christ you see all of them perfected. And so charity maybe being either higher than the good or a subset of the good. It's in Christ you see the perfect unity of all three of those things. And if you start to remove them, it lessens him in some way. And I just really struggle with that.
No, that's right. That's very important. As I remember, I think it's Irenaeus of Lyons, and also all the fight of the church against the Gnostics is you are dividing Christ.
Yes.
This is the word you use. You are dividing. You are putting Christ in different parts that have no unity. separating the human being from God, separating the spirit from the flesh. So now we have another way of separating. You say, well, you cannot separate Christ the shepherd from Christ the teacher, for example. They go together. Or Christ the one who loves from Christ who is teaching the truth. That's very true and very important.
Yes.
There is a sentence by St. Ignatius of Antioch as well that I think is here. It says, the faith is the beginning, the charity is the end. And then at one point he says also, faith is the flesh of Christ, charity is the blood of Christ. Mm-hmm. So it seems to be connecting very clearly faith and truth with love. Mm-hmm. Faith is like the foundation for love. This is Ignatius of Antioch, so it's 2nd century. It was the very beginning of the reflection of the church. Yeah. But then he says, it is in the Eucharist, so the flesh, his faith has to do with the flesh, because the flesh of Christ gives us life, reveals us the order of love. Mm-hmm. In his concrete flesh, he taught us how to love each other. And the relationships he established in the flesh with the Father and with his brothers are like the structure of our faith. So to believe is the truth of a way of loving that is fulfilling. And then the blood, which is the giving of life, is charity. So charity would be this order of love is alive with the love of Christ. When we enter into this way, this truth, we can receive the fulfillment of this love. So to separate truth from love, as you were saying, would be, for St. Ignatius of Antioch, would be to separate the flesh from the blood. Mm. And then what happens? Then Christ is dead. Yes. He's no longer alive. Christ is alive only because the flesh and the blood are together. If you separate flesh and blood, you don't have a living Christ. And I think that's part of the problem with Christology. I think it's important also because we are about to celebrate the Jubileum. Mm-hmm. So 2025 years of the birth of Christ, and this is always an occasion to go back to the Incarnation, and then also the anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, which was 325, so it's 700 years ago. Oh, yeah. That's also a very important occasion also to reflect on the Christological dogma and to put it together with the problems of today.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting too. I've heard sort of a trajectory of the church that it spent its first time kind of defining who God was, and then defining who Christ was, and now we're in a moment where we're kind of defining the human person, and so to revisit and kind of relearn what we mean by Christ and who Christ is and his relationship with us, it comes to help us better know ourselves, right? I mean, that's as you said. I mean, he reveals man to himself, and as you know, I mean, one of the biggest issues we're facing culturally, I mean, worldwide, is what is the human person, and what are its limitations? What are its, how much can be changed? Yeah, right. Things like that. And so it's a major metaphysical question going on right now, and the church has the answers for it. Right.
Yeah, you see that this what is called post-humanism. Mm-hmm. So bringing the human being to a new level that is no longer what we thought it was. I think when I said that some theologians are trying to change Christology or to look at a different way to Christology, is because they feel that Christ is an obstacle to this moving forward. So they can say, well, especially the life of Christ, the flesh of Christ, his life in the flesh, seems to be an obstacle, it's limiting our capacities for renewal of the human. Mm-hmm. And maybe they say, okay, look at the risen Christ, only the Christ beyond. No, that is because this is more malleable. It opens more possibilities, but not at Christ in his life in the flesh. It's limiting what is human. So I think that the anthropological question in the end, the new questions that we are facing had to do a lot with the human body.
Yes.
So when people they talk about post-humanism, I say, well, what was that? Because you cannot really go beyond man. Right. It's going to be always the human being. Yeah. So what really they want to say is, and I think is implied, is this post-humanism is post-body. Mm. So what really they're trying to say is now we can leave the body behind. Mm. So make a body that we can fashion by ourselves, we can transform by ourselves, and have a human being that now his body is no longer something that is dependent, that is fragile, that we have received and we have not made. So can we imagine a human being in which the body is our own creation, and therefore we have full control over our own lives? I think that's the anthropological question. No? Can we? So it has to do a lot with bodiliness, and that's why I think that St. John Paul II's theology of the body was crucial. He had this intuition, recovering the tradition, because from the Christian faith is the incarnation, is the center of the human being. Recovering the tradition, he was able to explain in a new way and to give to the church this gift, that the body is something that we receive. We haven't created it. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a task, of course, because we transform our bodies in order that we are able to love better. But you cannot forget that the body has been received, and that this receptivity is not evil, it's not something imposed upon you, but because it comes from love, can be received as a gift. This was is a moment in which he says, the body is the witness that creation is a gift. The body is the witness that this world is a gift to us from the Creator. So this path of the body to God and to life as a gift, as we started talking about that, this is a great gift that we have also the way of understanding the new challenges from. But everything starts with understanding that we have received the body, that we are children, we are sons and daughters, and this filial dimension of our being is crucial to our identity. If we reject that, then we really don't know who we are. Yes. I think that's the anthropological question: is can we develop? Here I remember I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago presenting a book by Monsignor Jean Lafitte, who's a bishop, and I worked with him for many years at the Jean Paul II Institute for Studies of Marriage and the Family. And he has translated his book into English. The title is Christ, the Destiny of the Human Being. And I think, so the destiny, and he proposes a filial anthropology. I think there are a lot of resources there that we can also follow to how anthropology is filial. Yeah. And my summary of anthropology, I think, of the proposal of the Church would be, we need to acknowledge that we are children, that we have received life, we are sons and daughters. When we understand that we have received life, then we are able to love. And so we become spouses, husband and wife, because we are able to give ourselves to another. And since this gift is so overflowing, we become fathers and mothers. So I would say that the anthropology, Christian anthropology, is based on the family. This is our itinerary. All of us, so we are called to be children, to become spouses, and then to be fathers and mothers. Maybe there is a spiritual way of reading that, in the sense that also for consecrated virginity, for priests who have celibacy, and for other different paths of life, this is always true. We always are children. We always have received life. We always are called to a gift of self to others, and this gift will be fruitful, whether it be in marriage or in consecrated virginity. This is the image of the human being. This is the image of man.
If you enjoyed the Benedictine Dialogues today, I want to invite you to visit our website, media.benedictine.edu. Be sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, where you will receive all of the latest in your inbox, or subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Thanks again for watching. God bless.